Welcome to another video from PS Leathercraft. Today I want to talk about the Leather Craftsman's round knife, which I talked about in my previous blog. This was made for me by a well-renowned knife maker in Zimbabwe, and here it is. Beautiful piece of work. He's never made one of these before, but he did a supreme job of this one. Let's talk about handling and safety before we go anywhere. These are extremely sharp. Sharp enough to shave with, sharp enough to cut through 4mm of vegetable tanned hide, which you will see a little bit later. So when I am not using this knife for longer periods, I will sheath it and put the knife away. So I am protected and the blade is protected. When I am working on a project and I want to set it down and pick it up all the time, I will use a piece of foam or a cloth even, and that way you're protecting the blade and not getting it blunt. When you are holding these, have it in the palm of your hand, 2 fingers on the back, and that gives you stability. You can hold the knife straight up, or you can angle it when you want to cut bevels, which we will demonstrate later, and you can also cut curves with it. That is by far the best way to use this. Trying to hold these knives like this and cutting a piece of leather is just too hard to do. When we are honing and sharpening, I will also hold it in the same way. So when you're honing the blade, hone it in 3 sections. So divide the blade into 3 and hone each section separately. That way you get a more even hone. So I'll demonstrate a little bit of honing right now, and I always hone my blade before using it, so a little and often, as the saying goes. So do 1/3 first, do the next third, and do the final third there. Flip it over and just do the same thing. That's my honing stick put away, and when you're cleaning it, I suggest putting it on a cloth like that. That way you've got no chance of cutting yourself when you are trying to clean your blade, and just give it a wipe. Much better than trying to do one of these things. So I will now show you the different ways that I use this knife for various leather projects. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a straight cut, and you'll see that I have marked this piece ready for a straight cut. And what I'm going to do is just turn it this way. First thing to remember, do not put your cutting hand in front of your blade. This is one reason why I don't use a ruler to run my blade along to get a straight line, because I'm going to have to hold the ruler and my hand will be in front of the blade. So when I'm cutting, I want to have my hand held behind the blade, and should the blade ever slip off, my fingers won't be in the way. To start the cut, I will roll cut like this to start, and then I can run the blade along the leather. This is a really tough piece of leather. Now, cutting a straight line takes practice, but you will get this. Now, before I get to the very end, I will roll cut to cut the final piece off. And the reason I do that is, if you are cutting and you just cut straight through, your knife will suddenly snap out of the piece of leather and you'll get a slip, and that's just dangerous. So you can just see how sharp and dangerous this is. This is a 3.6mm piece of leather, and we went straight through on that. It's a pretty hard piece as well, vegetable tanned cowhide. That's cutting straight lines, and on a thinner piece I'm going to show you cutting curved lines using the tip of the knife, just doing a simple curves like so. So that's another use of that particular knife. The other way of cutting straight lines, if you want, if you're not comfortable with slicing like I was showing you a little bit earlier, is to do a roll cut. And that is cutting all the way around using the blade like that in a rocking motion. Pretty tough to do, but you'll always see I've still got my fingers behind the blade. Gives me that stability. Another thing that you can use this blade for is bevel cuts. So when you want to join two pieces of leather, so you want to stitch a box like that, you can of course put your pieces of leather together like that and stitch it, and that is done. That is how some crafters do it. But you might want to do a 45-degree bevel and have a closer join. So I'm going to do it on the short edge just because it's easier. What you do is you are cutting about the same thickness of the leather from the edge at a 45-degree angle, and you just slide the blade along. Until you get to the bottom of the leather. Like that. And then when you put the two together, if they're both been cut, then you'll get a better join, and you can sew that together. That's cutting bevels. And another way of using this knife is if I want to fold this leather to create a box, you can see that being so thick, it's never going to fold nicely for me. So what I do is I'll cut a channel in there at 45 degrees, 90 degrees actually, and what you do is just mark off two lines at, again, roughly the thickness of the leather. I'm going a little bit wider. Now what you do is you cut into the leather at about 45 degrees each side, down each line. And you don't want to go all the way through, obviously. So this is a guessing game, and it takes practice. Now you come from the other side and you hope that you meet in the middle without cutting through the leather. Like I said, this takes practice and patience. I think we'll need one more on this side here. There we go. Now we have the channel in the middle, and now what I usually do is I'll just wet this down here and down there and fold it, and I'll get a better corner from that. There is a tool for creating these channels, but they're really hard to work with. With practice, I think it's much easier with this round knife. And let's cut a corner. And so I have seen, and I've done this myself, crafters cutting corners like this, you see, and you spend forever trying to get through the piece of leather all nice and round. So what I've seen is if you just slice off little slivers using your roll cut, you'll have a nicely rounded corner. It needs to be finished off and then you're done. The other purpose of this knife is to bevel, leather, which is similar to, sorry, not bevel, skive. It's similar to beveling. And what you want to do is thin this end down, for example, on a strap or a belt, where when you are folding it over, you want to thin this down so you don't have a nasty little step sitting over here. So the way we do this is on a piece of glass. The reason we use a glass is because I want to slide the blade along, and I can't do that on the plastic just as easily. And what that does is protects the blade. But what you're doing is the same thing as beveling. And this again takes practice. Just turn this over. Very, very similar to beveling. There you go. Now you'll have it thinned down. So now when you fold it over, you have a more flush finish to your strap. The next benefit of this knife is something that was shown to me by a master saddler, and it's a real trick to learn. It's cutting belt ends, or just cutting the ends of a strap, for example. And now normally I would use a template and I would draw it out and then cut it through. What I was shown is this. As you pull the leather through, you roll the knife. So pull and roll. And you have a belt end. And there we have it. The Leather Craftsman's round knife and its uses. Thank you very much to Cornelius Smith, who made this for me.